Good afternoon and welcome into another edition of Dodgers Dawgs, part of the Dodgers Daily Network. My name is Austin Brubaker. I will be your host this evening. Just me tonight. Monday nights usually is Casey's night off, so he's off going out fishing, doing whatever he wants to do on a Monday night, which is important to have those different types of breaks. So super happy to be able to join you guys and just be able to talk some more Dodgers baseball. There's not a whole lot in the news tonight as far as the Dodgers, or at least that has been broken within the past couple of minutes. I'm assuming that nothing has broken within the past few minutes. So it's going to be a fun show tonight, just being able to interact and answer a whole bunch of different questions that you guys have. This is one of these shows where I'm going to be very reliant on you guys. I actually don't have a whole lot prepped for this show, but I also know for a lot of different shows that I do, I have a topic that I have coming into the show that I want to discuss, and sometimes I'm able to get to a decent amount of crowd interaction. There's other shows where, because I'm preoccupied on different things that I have, it's not as much interaction from the crowd. So I want to leave this as an opportunity for you guys to continue to ask questions about your Los Angeles Dodgers and how to make this team and this future as airtight as possible. How can we continue to build a dynasty for the Los Angeles Dodgers is something that we've been talking about the entire offseason, but I want to continue to open up discussions for you guys to be able to talk and interact. Just to state with the Dodgers as where they are at given the past couple of days. One, the signing of Tanner Scott has been made official. He is officially a Los Angeles Dodger. That means that the 40-man roster is full at 40 players on the 40-man roster. Now, this is also something, part of the title of the video, that's super exciting. We'll get into this in a little bit. Their spring training, or at least pitchers and catchers reporting, officially happens 2 weeks from today. We are on the verge. We are very close to the Dodgers reporting to spring training. We are super close to the start of baseball again. And that is something that I think each one and every single one of us, as much fun as off-season talk is, I enjoy so much better the actual games and seeing things actually take place and action starting to happen. And we are just 2 weeks away from the start of pitchers and catchers reporting, and then I believe in just 24 days, something like that, is when the first spring training games will start on February 20th in Camelback Ranch. It's going to be super exciting when that happens. We'll talk a little bit. I'll just mention over the names in just a little bit as far as other players who are non-roster invites. Super exciting to have that take place. 2 weeks away from pitchers and catchers reporting, which that date is incredibly important to the Dodgers because that is the official date in which the Dodgers could, they don't have to, but they could move some of the players on their 40-man roster to the 60-day injured list. That opens up additional 40-man roster spots to add in other players, like potentially a Clayton Kershaw, like potentially a Kike Hernandez if they want to go down that path, or potentially like a Kirby Yates. It was reported last week, I believe last Tuesday, because we went live on a Tuesday night, which is not common for us here at Dodgers Dawgs, that Kirby Yates was going to be signing with the Los Angeles Dodgers, and it seems like there's a lot of indications that he very likely is going to continue to be signing with the Los Angeles Dodgers. There hasn't really been a whole lot of reporting or anything that has been made official. It sounds like it's going to be potentially a multi-year deal, although that is just based off of things that I've read. Do not take that to heart with anything of what that is said. The Dodgers, if they want to make that move, and if they're going to make that move official, still would have to make some sort of trade or designate somebody for assignment if they wanted to bring in a Kirby Yates and add him to the mold. And that is, I think, one of the biggest questions if they're going to bring him in. And even if it's something where they wait until spring training starts, how do they make all of these different pieces work while maintaining the flexibility on this roster to be able to keep these arms as healthy as possible? The more guys that you have that don't have the flexibility, the more you're going to be relying upon those guys during the course of the regular season, which sounds like a really good thing because those guys are good pitchers. They are the guys that you want to pitch in a lot of different situations. However, if you want those guys to also be healthy, ready to go for October, you need additional flexibility, which is going to be part of the decision-making process for the Dodgers. It's also the balance between having a lot of depth as for pitchers while also maintaining flexibility with that depth. Because if you don't have flexibility, you're going to run out of that depth very quickly because these arms will be utilized. We might talk a little bit about that in just a little bit as well. Again, this show is going to be a little bit more of an interactive show, or we'll see how much of an interactive show it is. Super fun tonight. Also want to make sure that you guys know I believe there's going to be interview dropped tomorrow night with Alex Friedman, play-by-play announcer for Oklahoma City. Now the Comets. Casey was able to play a little bit of interaction between him and Alex yesterday during the show. Also, he got to interact with both Coach Barikoff and Coach Holt yesterday, which was super cool to be able to hear from them again. But tonight's going to be a little bit of a good interaction with you guys. I'm excited to be able to do this, and it is always an honor to be here live, Dodgers Dogs, to be able to interact with you guys. We'll be going until about 3:15 Pacific. Just a little personal information. I'd have to go by 4 o'clock over. I got some stuff that I've got to do, but I also have to eat dinner with it being on the East Coast right here, so I got to make sure that that gets taken care of as well. So excited to be here with you guys. Let's check in with the chat. Orlando is in the chat. Hello to Dodgers friends. Baseball is almost back, and that absolutely is right. Just 2 more weeks until pitchers and catchers report, and a little bit over 3 weeks until the start of spring training games. I'm super excited. I will actually be at the first 3 Dodgers spring training games in Camelback Ranch over to Mesa for the Chicago Cubs game, and then back to Camelback Ranch during my short time in Arizona. Daniel, thank you very much for joining us. Almost that time for Dodgers baseball. Can hardly wait for the season to start. Let's go Dodgers. Gregory's in the chat, along with Craig Osterberg. Justin Yamas, thank you very much for greeting us from France. 11:15 p.m. over there. Hopefully it's not too late for you. Excited to be able to interact with you guys as well. Craig Osterberg, how is the Dodger Stadium construction going? I don't know exactly how the Dodger Stadium construction is going. I'm not from Los Angeles. I'm not from California, so I've actually never been to Dodger Stadium before. So I don't have a lot of insight as far as the progress, as far as the how everything is going over there. I have full expectation based off the quality of this organization that whatever construction that they're going to have is going to be completed by opening day, though. So I have a lot of trust in this front office and a lot of trust in their ability to be able to do everything the right way, because if you look at the other aspects of this organization, they do things the right way, even down to the smaller levels or the minor league levels. They do a lot of things the right way. Tony, thank you very much for joining us. Great hearing you. What's going on with Kirby Yates? It's a really good question. I don't know if it's something, this could be something, I don't remember exactly where I read it. I don't know if it just has to do with they're still looking to do the physical with Kirby Yates. He still has to pass the physical. But what is intriguing, or at least a little bit concerning about this right now, and maybe concerning is not the right word, and I don't think it is the right word. What's fascinating about it is we haven't heard any leaks as far as the potential contract that Kirby Yates is getting. Typically in these types of situations, just like what happened with Tanner Scott, we heard before it was made official by the Dodgers that he was signing a 4-year, $72 million contract. We didn't know any of the details of that contract as far as the money up front and the deferrals, but we knew roughly the years and the amount of money. We haven't really heard much from Kirby Yates, and it's been almost a week since that signing has initially taken place, which I don't know if that means the Dodgers are trying to delay this until spring training to hold onto as many guys as possible. Remember, once pitchers and catchers report, you can move those guys on your 40-man roster who are going to be injured to the 60-day injured list. That is when that roster spot opens up. Perhaps they're waiting for that avenue, although it is a long time, almost 3 weeks, for Kirby Yates to commit to the Dodgers for him to wait until spring training starts to sign with them. And even then, there could be some questions as far as what the Dodgers do with roster flexibility. So it could be a combination of physical. It could be a combination of the Dodgers are looking for some type of trade with some of the pieces that they currently have. There is actually a good discussion with Jeff Spiegel was talking a little bit about different individuals who the Dodgers would be most likely to trade. And he mentioned a lot of things that we've talked about on the show. He did a really good job with that list of talking about guys that don't have minor league options and just the necessity for the Dodgers to be able to have those minor league options. So perhaps the Dodgers are looking for some type of trade with Ryan Brazier or even an Anthony Banda, which I know not necessarily would be super popular, or even a Dustin May. All those guys don't have minor league options, which means there's limited roster flexibility. That could be some of the holdup. There also is the possibility that it could be due to some of the contract details that they're looking into with Kirby Yates. He is older. I believe he's going to be entering his age 38 season. So if it's looking like it's going to be a multi-year deal, which it very well could be, not the biggest fan of giving multi-year deals to relievers of that age, but with the caliber of pitcher that he was last season, I would understand if that is the price point that Kirby Yates is setting for himself. That could be an issue where they're working out some of the details. So I don't know exactly what's going on. I think it's a combination of different factors. It also could be something where they're still in the process of developing that contract. All I know is that things are not official right now. And because things are not official, he is not currently a Los Angeles Dodger. He very likely is going to be, but he is not currently a Los Angeles Dodger. How the math works out once he gets added into the fold, which this is taking the assumption that he's going to be a Dodger, that math is going to have to play itself out. And one of the biggest things that the Dodgers are going to have to determine is how they make that math work given the current roster. And how do they balance out the opportunities for all of these different guys with the risk for potential injuries? I think is going to be really fascinating, and also going to be a big determining factor if they decide to keep around both Ryan Brazier and an Anthony Banda. Perhaps that's an indication that some of the guys that are currently projected to make the 26-man roster, mostly because they have either a lot of big league experience, or for most of them, they don't have any minor league options. Perhaps like what we have heard about with a Michael Kopech, there could be more injuries that are in play on this roster, and that could be a necessity to bring in a Kirby Yates. Going to be fascinating to see what happens from there. Continuing on, going into the chat right now, which again, if you guys have any questions or anybody within this organization that you want me to discuss, more than happy to be able to interact with you guys and be able to talk through different aspects. Let's see. Continuing on right here. Stephen T, do you think Sasaki will be in the pitching rotation on opening day? If I had to guess, my initial guess would be probably yes, just based off all of the reports, all of the indications, and from what we've heard from some of the comments, it doesn't sound like they want to slow play Roki Sasaki to start this season. If they were planning on strategically using Roki Sasaki a little bit later down the line and then potentially adding him into the roster, let's say they wanted to add him in May and June, and they wanted to slow play him onto this roster, perhaps I could see an argument to where, especially because he's not on the active 40-man roster, they might not want to do that. There are certain reasons why the Dodgers might want Roki Sasaki to start the season at the major league level. One of the biggest ones being if he does win the Rookie of the Year, which I think is a very real possibility for a Roki Sasaki. Last year we saw a Luis Gil win it in the American League for the New York Yankees. And I don't remember how many innings that he pitched, but it wasn't an exorbitant amount of innings. It could be relatively comparable to what Roki Sasaki, if he spent the entire season at the big league level, could pitch. And if he has that exact same potential, that we all are expecting with Roki Sasaki, there's a good chance that he could win Rookie of the Year, which the only reason why I bring that up, the only reason that why that is relevant is because if he does so, the Dodgers, because of some recent additions to Major League Baseball rules, would be compensated with some sort of draft pick for doing so. And we know this Dodgers organization is looking for any opportunity that they can, especially because they are losing draft picks. They're losing international free agent money because they are over the highest level of competitive balance tax. They would look for any opportunity to be able to gain as much as they possibly could in terms of draft picks and international free agent pool money, because that adds additional talent to this roster. For that reason, I could see why there is a very solid argument with Roki Sasaki making this big league roster. But I think it's going to mostly focus on how he does and how he translates coming over during spring training. How does he look? How do the Dodgers feel that he can grow and develop? Because they don't have to add him onto the 40-man roster, or not onto the 26-man roster or the 40-man roster, until they are ready for him to be on the big league roster. I would anticipate that being at the start of the season based on everything that we've heard and everything that we're hearing. They are exciting and probably expect him to be on the big league roster. That would be my expectation, but they don't necessarily have to do that. So if I had to guess, I would say yes. We'll see what happens though. Craig Osterberg, who's your opening day starter at Dodger Stadium? Orlando followed up with that and said Glasnow opened last year at Dodger Stadium. Maybe Snell gets it this year. That's a really good question because the Dodgers have some really good options for the starting rotation. You could go with a Yoshi Yamamoto, who last year signed one of the biggest contracts for a starting pitcher in baseball history with what he was able to do, and he was part of the team that helped lead them in October. I would anticipate that he's going to get one of the two games that they're going to have out in Japan, or one of the games that they're going to have out in Japan against Chicago. They also have Blake Snell, as was mentioned by Orlando, Tyler Glasnow, who Orlando mentioned as well. I don't know exactly who's out of those who is going to get the start at Dodger Stadium. One of them is going to, and it's going to be incredible. If I had to take a guess, I'll put my guess just because I think Yoshi Yamamoto will get the first start in Japan, and it will depend on how the actual rest and how they want to map it out. But I'll just throw one out for Blake Snell just because they signed him in a free agent contract. That's just throwing something out on the wall. Don't necessarily know if that's actually going to happen or not. Continuing on in the chat, let's see. Craig Osterberg says the Dodgers need to take care of Dave Roberts. I agree. And as has been mentioned on this show and a lot of other different shows, this past season was a legacy-defining season for Dave Roberts. He earned himself a new deal with what he was able to do, and probably earned himself, because this is going to extend his time in Los Angeles, whereas if he lost again in the first round of the playoffs, there would be a lot of questions with him in Los Angeles. He likely earned himself a potential spot in Cooperstown with what he did last season. There's been a lot of frustration with Dave Roberts in the past, but what he has done with this culture, what he has done with the development of these players, and what he's done to help build this team up and raise up some of these players has been absolutely remarkable. He is the Dodgers manager, and he will be the Dodgers manager going forward. They'll have some sort of discussion, and I anticipate that he is going to be rightly compensated for what he has done and built over the past several seasons for the Dodgers, however long he's been the Dodgers manager, which has had moments of ups and downs. But now that the Dodgers are on the verge of building a dynasty, and what he has done over the past couple of seasons has been really, really good. Justin Yamas, thank you very much. I spent more money on beer and eggs this winter than San Diego, Miami, Minnesota, and St. Louis have spent on the roster combined. There's not much I can say or comment to that, but certainly there are other organizations that have had the ability to go out and get other players. And what the Dodgers have done is they've been opportunistic about what they have been able to do and who they've been able to target. Yes, initially they took care of the biggest need that they had, which was starting pitcher, when they went out and got a Blake Snell. I would call them opportunistic when going out and getting a guy like a Michael Conforto. They saw a guy that they really liked his ability and what he's able to do and what he could potentially do in this Dodgers offense away from San Francisco Stadium and what he could mean to this offense going forward. I think he has the very good potential of being a bounce back candidate or one of those guys that reaches some of his potential in a Dodgers uniform, just like what we saw Teo did during last season. I have very high expectations for that signing. They went out and re-signed Teoscar Hernandez, and then they, because of the culture that they've built, allowed them to get some other signings. They signed a Roki Sasaki because of the culture that they were able to build and what they have done, not just for Japanese players, not just for the front office, which is rock solid in everything that they're basically doing, but with how they have treated so many of their different players and their player development, coaching, all of these different aspects went into play getting Roki Sasaki. They went out and after a couple months of nobody signing him, went out and got the best reliever on the market in Tanner Scott. And now it looks like they're getting another great reliever because everybody had the chance to sign a Kirby Yates, and yet nobody signed a Kirby Yates. And so they're going out and getting another great talent that is one of the top 5 relievers in the Dodgers bullpen, if not towards the top of that. Really solid stuff for the Dodgers. Other teams have not taken that exact same approach. Some of them don't have, and most other teams do not have the exact same type of financial resources that the Dodgers do, but they do have some financial resource that they can leverage to acquire different talent, even if that talent, in the case of a team like Miami, is leveraged to go out and trade at the trade deadline to get additional prospects. We've seen trade deadlines of recent years. One of the reasons why the Dodgers are spending so much money in free agency is because the trade deadline has become so valuable or so high priced for teams. It very much is a seller's market, which means if you have pieces that you can trade to other organizations that have value, you can return some really, really good prospects. Think about what the Marlins were able to get from San Diego in the Tanner Scott deal. They got some really good players, really good prospects for half of a year of a relief pitcher who was going to be a free agent. And in this case, San Diego was not able to re-sign a Tanner Scott, and they gave away some really good prospects in that deal. If you're a team like that, if you're one of these other teams, why would you not go out and try to get some of these players to add to the talent level of your team, not just to go out and win a couple of extra games, which is certainly not going to hurt your organization. Even if you're not going to make the playoffs, there still is a Major League Baseball draft lottery, in which case you still have a chance to get the number 1 pick. You're not guaranteed the number 1 pick if you decide to tank, which was a reason why other organizations might not have signed other players in the past. But it adds additional talent to your organization that you could leverage in trade situations with other teams now that there's more teams that are in the postseason contention. So that's some of the questions that I have. Obviously, it's a case-by-case basis for each one of these organizations, and there could be an argument that they want to use some of their opportunities for some of their younger guys to see what they have. A strategy that hasn't been implemented as much, but is a worthwhile strategy. It hasn't been implemented by the Dodgers a whole lot. Could be a much worthwhile strategy for other organizations, but still, a lot of guys are still free agents, and if they're just going to sit there in free agency and the Dodgers have the opportunity to add additional talent, if it makes their team better, if it gives them a better chance to win a World Series, why would you not try to take care of every situation that you possibly can to grow your team, to make your team as good as possible? That is something that I think there's a lot of frustration with some other fans and with other organizations for the Dodgers, because I think a lot of other teams would like their team to spend or to invest in their roster as much as the Dodgers have. And so that imbalance in trying to add additional talent has perhaps never been more apparent in the game of baseball, or at least from the past couple of years, which, if you're a Dodgers fan, absolutely amazing what they're able to do. If you're a Marlins fan or one of these other fans from another organization, it could be a little bit frustrating looking from a outside perspective at what the Dodgers are doing, especially because there's reports that the Dodgers are getting these players when other organizations are offering them a little bit more money. That goes to show the value of culture, the importance of building up your roster as best as you can. The Dodgers do it and have built a formula and foundation as well as any organization has in recent memory, which is why they have the best chance out of anybody to be able to build a dynasty. And not just build a dynasty in which you can win a couple of World Series in a couple of years, but also be able to continue to have sustained success for the long term. This is something that the foundation hasn't been there since the Yankees had that during much of the 20th century. They were a foundational team that for decades were able to continue to compete. And I think that is exactly what the Dodgers want to do going forward, is not just win World Series over the next couple of years, which, of course, they're doing everything they can to win as many World Series over the next couple of years, but also to be able to compete for decades to come. That is something that they're building, and because they are leveraging all of their resources, or as many of their resources as they possibly can, to acquire as much talent as they can leverage some of the other talent that they might not need. Talent like potentially a Ryan Brazier or an Anthony Banda to continue to reinvest into this organization. Perhaps use those players to go out and trade for some sort of prospect that doesn't need to be added to the 40-man roster that they wouldn't have been able to get because of the situation that they have draft-wise. But they can still get talent that way. The front office knows what they're doing, and they're going to do everything that they can to build the roster as best as they can. And all of the different worries that we have right now as fans, I think the front office clearly knows what they're doing, and they have earned the trust of us as fans to be able to make the correct decisions going forward. Things that we talked about a lot. Optionability. The Dodgers know they must have that in order to make it through the season. If they don't, they're going to wear out their pitchers, and then they're not going to have the same type of arms, or they're going to have arms with very limited big league experience pitching in some of the most crucial innings in the postseason, something that they don't necessarily want to do. They have earned the trust of us as fans, and we'll continue to go forward and see what they do to continue to improve this roster. Let's see, continuing on, what's up back to you as well. Flat Life, Glasnow as the opening day starter, and Yamamoto in Tokyo very much could be the option that the Dodgers go down with Glasnow being opening day starter at Dodger Stadium. He would have earned it. He pitched incredibly well when he was healthy with the Dodgers. Yamamoto, I think we're all guessing, is going to be one of the starters that is pitching out in Tokyo, and boy, is that going to be fun to watch. I believe on March 18th. I believe is when opening day out in Tokyo is going to be. It can be real early in the morning for Dodgers fans to be able to wake up, but I think every single one of you in the chat is going to wake up at that time to be able to watch the game. Let's see, continuing, Delirium 9, I suspect Kike Hernandez signing will be announced a day or two in advance of spring training. Dave Roberts' 10-year extension probably announced a day prior to the Tokyo series. We'll see what happens with Kike Hernandez. I know Clint on Dodgers territory was talking a little bit, and it doesn't sound like, or at least there's some rumors that there could be not a whole lot of conversations between Kike and the Dodgers at this point. I think a lot of our expectations is that the Dodgers would at least be interested in bringing back a Kike Hernandez. As we've talked about a lot here at Dodgers Daily, that would have ramifications to your roster. Currently, you have, I call it a group of 3 players. I'm not including Hunter Fiducia in this, although he's incredibly talented, because I don't believe that you want or are going to keep 3 different catchers, I should say, on your active 26-man roster, especially because the 3 catchers won't have a whole lot of positional versatility. Hunter Fiducia has been exclusively a catcher. Barnes, catcher. Will Smith, at this point of his career, is exclusively a catcher. You're not going to have those guys. But you have a group of 3 right now. And currently, it's a choose 2 out of the 3 that can make your big league roster of James Outman, Andy Pages, and Ha-Sung Kim. If that is the case, or Ha-Sung Kim, I don't remember exactly how to pronounce it. I forget it every single time that I'm on live right now. Between Kim, Pages, and Outman, you get to choose 2 of those. If Kike Hernandez is added to this roster, assuming that nobody else is moved on from, assuming that they don't release a Chris Taylor, I'm not expecting them to release a Chris Taylor. You can only choose 1 of Pages, Outman, and Kim. And if it's Kim, that leaves Andy Pages and James Outman without any minor league options for the 2026 season, which means that they would have to be on the big league roster in 2026 if you want to keep them around within your organization. You have to keep Andy Pages on your big league roster. I think a lot of Dodgers fans were like, sure, we'll keep Andy Pages. Maybe James Outman, maybe there might be some questions, but there's a lot less flexibility in that case, and their value as players drops down quite a bit if you bring back a Kike Hernandez. That could be a sacrifice that you're willing to make, and could be a sacrifice that the Dodgers as an organization would make. I don't know how that's going to play out. If he does get brought back, I would anticipate, just because of limitations to the 40-man roster, that he would not be brought back until spring training actually starts, or until pitchers and catchers report, when you can move guys to the 60-day injury list. If they're going to bring him back, that would be the case where they're going to bring him back. Exact same thing with a Clayton Kershaw. That's the exact same time frame of when they would bring him back. And then Dave Roberts' extension, I hope that gets done during the course of spring training. He has been really good to this organization. We've defended him quite a bit, even when there's been some decisions that we have disagreed with Dave Roberts. He has earned it because he has two World Series championships with this team and has built upon a decade of winning baseball for it. It's been absolutely amazing for this. Yamamoto versus Imanaga in Japan Game 1 is going to be absolutely amazing to be. That's just good baseball right there. To see Yamamoto versus Imanaga, to have Shohei Ohtani return back to Japan, to see all of these different stars over there for the game of baseball. Yes, it's happening super early in the morning for America, but what that's going to mean for that country, for Japan, for that side of the world, especially with the amount of talented players that have come over from that side of the world, it's going to be absolutely amazing to be able to watch. Tony, thank you very much for joining us. I know you have a great affinity for the homegrown players, but who do you think might be traded? I think it could be James Outman and Chris Taylor, possibly DFA. It's a really good question, and it is determined by the health of the guys on the roster. And this is information that I don't have or I don't have inside info to. And even if I did, which I don't, I wouldn't release any of this information. So, assuming that everyone is healthy, and let's say that it's a Kirby Yates that you're bringing in. Kirby Yates, currently the Dodgers 40-man roster is full at 40. If you're bringing Kirby Yates, that would be 41. You got to move on from somebody. It very likely would be one of the pitchers that you have that does not have any minor league options. It very likely would be the Dodgers would look to trade either a Ryan Brazier, or they would look to trade an Anthony Banda, possibly even a guy like a Dustin May, all guys that don't currently have any minor league options. If you look at a Ryan Brazier, he's at the last year of his 2-year deal he signed last offseason. So last year, 1 year, $4.5 million left. Anthony Banda, no minor league options, can't be moved up and down, and pitched incredibly well, which is something that he hasn't reached that exact same level of success throughout his career. So there's a limited track record of success for Anthony Banda. And then Dustin May, no minor league options, and also has been injured quite a bit. Those would be the options if you were to look at a Kirby Yates and bring him in, that I think would be the most likely options if everyone is healthy. which we've heard about a Michael Kopech potentially dealing with injuries. Even with that's the case, if that's the only injury that we know of that has taken place, outside from the injuries that we already know about to some of the younger guys, Stone, Hurt, Sheehan, all of these different guys that have been dealing with different injuries that they're trying to come back from. If there's no injuries that have taken place there, I would anticipate it would come from that group because you wouldn't have any flexibility on your roster if you added in a Kirby Yates to where you might have to option down either a Tony Gonsolin or Alex Vesia, which I don't see as very likely outcomes for this team because they deserve to be on the Major League roster. If we're talking about a Kike Hernandez and bringing him in, that might be a little bit of a different conversation. Chris Taylor, I wouldn't anticipate them designated him for assignment. I don't know actually where he's at as far as potentially reaching his 10 years of service time. I don't know if he's already achieved that or if he's going to achieve that this upcoming year. If he's already achieved it, that's not a conversation. If it's something where he's going to achieve it this upcoming year, perhaps that's a conversation where maybe they don't necessarily want to cut him because they want to do right by him. Knows that Dodgers like to treat their players really well that way. I actually don't know if that's the case with CT3. With James Outman, that could be a possibility for him, and that actually could be if the Dodgers do decide to trade James Outman before the regular season starts, let's say in exchange for a Kike Hernandez, bringing him in onto the 40-man roster. Obviously not trading James Outman for Kike Hernandez, but because Kike Hernandez is added, you go ahead and trade a James Outman. That honestly, if the Dodgers don't have any plans for James Outman this upcoming season, which they very well could, and if you're looking at one of the weaknesses of this Dodgers team, it has to do with their defense. Their defense, especially out in the outfield, is not going to be good, especially if you're relying upon Michael Conforto, who is going to get a majority of time in left field, and he's going to get majority of every day at bats out there. I don't expect him to be slowly a platoon bat. I expect him to be 450, 500 plate appearances this upcoming season. Michael Conforto, a little bit below average defensively. Teoscar Hernandez, as much as we love him as an actual player, below average defensively out in the outfield. Even if he is better at right field than he is in left field, I still think that he is a below average defender. So then you might be looking for a center fielder that is a little bit better defensively out there because the corner outfield spots are a little bit weaker. You might be wanting a little bit more range, and the best defensive center fielder that is this close to the big league level, clearly above and beyond, is James Outman. Tommy Edman's a good player out there and would be solid defensively out there, but he would not be as good defensively for this team as a James Outman. That could be an argument of wanting to keep a James Outman on this roster, even perhaps more than an Andy Pages, who they love. I think they love what his bat is and what he's able to produce, especially against left-handed pitching. But do you really trust the outfield defense of Conforto in left, Pages in center, Teoscar Hernandez in right field, if Andy Pages has not made strides in with his defense in center field? That was one of the issues that I had and some of the questions that I have, because I want Andy Pages to be an everyday player, but an everyday player at the corner outfield spot. When they signed Michael Conforto, there is certainly some questions about what they were able to do, and led to some questions about, are they even going to re-sign a Teoscar Hernandez? When they re-signed both of them, that relegated Andy Pages' role to a lot less. And if you want to see the continued development of Andy Pages, he needs to get everyday regular at-bats. And it needs to be at the big league level. He's going to plateau if he gets regular at-bats at the minor league level, although that might be better than sitting on the bench 5 days a week and then only getting maybe two starts a week. How they handle him is going to be, it's going to be fascinating. It's going to be incredibly important for this organization going forward. So it could be possibilities of what they do. And with James Outman, especially if they don't see a path going forward for him, let's say that they prefer an Andy Pages and want to give him priority at bats over a James Outman, understanding where James Outman is with minor league options, that could be a possibility. But I won't anticipate that being the initial move to bring in a Kirby Yates onto this 40-man roster, unless the pitching staff is more injured than what we think it is. Or unless the Dodgers are betting that the pitching staff will be more injured than what we think it is. Stephen T, thank you very much for joining us. Do you think the big international ticket next year is Murakami? What are the chances of the Dodgers getting him? Don't necessarily know. I haven't done a lot of research into Murakami. I don't watch a whole lot of Japanese baseball, so I'm not super familiar with all of those guys. Excuse me. I know he has a lot of different talent. I believe when he comes over, and please do not quote me on this is just my best guess. It depends on when he's coming over. I think he's going to be just like a normal free agent would. So I don't think he's one of those players that's going to require international free agent money. Again, please let me know if I'm incorrect with this. I think he would be looking for a contract, maybe not to the same scale and probably not to the same scale as a Yoshi Yamamoto would. He would be looking for a big league deal like that, like he would be entering free agency for most other players. Roki Sasaki was a special exception to where he was coming over early from Japan, in which case he had to fall under the traditional normal international free agent rules, which makes them sign minor league contracts, and there's a very limited pool of money that players get. So for Murakami, I think he would be just like a normal free agent would coming over from the game, in which case the Dodgers have to make a determination because next year Max Muncy will have, I believe, a $10 million club option. If he's still continuing to be as effective as he is right now, which last year was close to a 130 WRC plus player at the third base position who played really solid defense, actually about league average defense, for Max Muncy is really good for him. They're going to have to weigh the price point that they get Max Muncy for with the potential future of what they're looking at third base. It could be determined by what happens with some of the guys in the system, what we see from the advancement of an Alex Freeland during this upcoming season. Do they see some more growth at the third base position going forward? And also, how would they fit a Max Muncy onto this roster if they were to bring in a Murakami as well? Or would the days of Max Muncy being on this roster be very limited? One of the reasons why I've been opposed to the Dodgers getting a player like a Nolan Arenado onto this team, yes, theoretically you could move Max Muncy over to the second base position, a position that he hasn't played in a couple of years ever since the Dodgers or Major League Baseball got rid of the shift. I really don't trust the up-the-middle defense of Mookie Betts at shortstop and Max Muncy at second base. As much as I talk about the lack of trust in the outfield defense of Conforto, Pages, and Teoscar Hernandez, I trust way less the up-the-middle defense of Mookie Betts at shortstop and Max Muncy at second base. Two phenomenal players, and two players who have played those positions. I just don't trust the range and the defensive ability at this point. Perhaps Mookie Betts could be a lot better at shortstop than what we're expecting, and a lot of the issues with him had to do with throwing wise. But that is an issue that you could run into during the next season if you bring in a Murakami, in which case it could be a Max Muncy being a little bit more of a bench bat. We'll cross over that bridge a little bit more, especially once we do a little bit more research with Murakami. Gregory, thank you very much for joining us. Can you explain the MiLB draft to us a little? How has Yamamoto and Sasaki skipped the draft? I feel like the draft was like the NFL draft. The Dodgers wouldn't be getting these guys. Yeah, so it's a little bit different with Major League Baseball with their draft. So with the Major League Baseball draft, which takes place during the month of July, usually, and this has been a change over the past couple of years, has taken place around the All-Star break weekend, usually kicks off some of the All-Star weekend festivities, even before the Home Run Derby. Those are for domestic players within the United States that are either high school players or college type players. Now, there could be some players that get drafted from Canada. I don't know exactly all of the rules with that, but I know it's typically for North America. Let's just call it that, and especially with the United States. We'll just call it that. Different players that could get drafted either from high school or college. It is a system designed for those specific players from universities or from high schools within the United States. There also is a system in place for international free agents, and that takes place, as we've seen over the course of the past month, with international free agency. So with the Major League Baseball draft, there's a certain amount of money in which case teams can use to get players from the MLB draft, which is determined by the number of is determined by the slot of draft pick that you have and the slot of draft picks that you have through the MLB draft. Similarly, there's a certain amount of money that you can get for international free agency, which typically takes place for international free agents outside of the United States that are 16 to usually about 20, 21, 22, sometimes, like in Roki Sasaki's case, 23, 24, some of that time period. What's different between Yamamoto and Sasaki? Sasaki, with players that are coming over from Japan, Korea, some of these other leagues, which they have leagues set up, they come over typically after they have a certain amount of experience and have reached a certain age. If they have a certain amount of experience and they've reached a certain age at the level that they have, which either in Korea, the KBO or the Japanese Baseball League over there, they can come over and sign immediately to a major league free agent contract. So with Yoshi Yamamoto, he was over in Japan pitching for several years, met the threshold that he had to reach to come over to Major League Baseball and sign directly to a Major League contract, in which case teams are not subject to the international free agent pool money because that's a player outside of that and has reached a certain level of experience and years required. With Roki Sasaki, he still hadn't reached the number of years and age requirement in order to come to Major League Baseball and signed the contract that Yoshi Yamamoto had, and so he was subject to the rules and guidelines set for international free agency, in which case there's only a limited amount of money teams can use to go after and get certain free agents on the international market. Dodgers had about a little over $5 million to be able to divvy out to certain international players, and they utilized that a lot for Roki Sasaki, and with some of the money that they got for trading away a Dylan Campbell, and then trading away one other prospect. They get $1 million from Cincinnati for that. They went out and were able to sign a couple of other free agents. Major League Baseball draft, think of it, and this is the easy way to think of it, just for the players that are coming up from America, college guys, or guys that are coming out of high school. Those players, because they're getting offers from different colleges, typically get a little bit of higher bonus pool money. That happens with the Major League Baseball draft. That's one section, and then the other section is international free agents. And then we get the best players coming over from different leagues outside the United States that once they have certain age or certain service time, which I don't know all of the different descriptions as far as what is required over there, they can sign major league deals with any major league team. So hopefully that explains a little bit of what the question that you had right there. Showtime LA, thank you very much for joining us. Hey Austin, thoughts on Peyton Martin and Peter Hubeck? I think they're up there with Ferris and Yang as our best pitching prospects. Yeah, so I got to see a lot of Peyton Martin, and I got to see a ton of Peter Hubeck pitch at Great Lakes last year. Peyton Martin really turned a corner. I think it was 4th of July weekend. He's incredibly talented with what he was able to do. And Peter Hubeck, his stuff is nasty. That curveball is legit, man. If Peter Hubeck can find ways to be able to, he has a lot of the tools that Dodgers are looking for. It's got a lot of swing and miss stuff. Struggles sometimes with being able to keep it in the zone, which I think has to do with a philosophy for Peter Hubeck, which this is just my assumption of his philosophy, is he's trying to avoid some of the big contact, and he's trying to get a lot of swing and miss, and he'll deal with some of the walks, similar to kind of what we see philosophy-wise with Blake Snell. Peter Hubeck's going to get a lot of swing and miss in what he's able to do, and it's that about that pitch ability and being able to find ways to find the weak contact when he has to go in the zone and has to make his different pitches that I think is going to take him to that next level. And then Peyton Martin is just legit as well. Those are two incredibly talented pitchers that just show the depth of this organization. With Hubeck, I would probably anticipate him starting the season at Double-A, given that he ended 2023 in Great Lakes and then pitched all of 2024 in Great Lakes and was really, really excellent. Have nothing but good things to say about both of them. We'll see where Peyton Martin starts. If he starts in Great Lakes, if he starts in Tulsa, he's going to kill it wherever he goes. Really good players right there. Justin Llamas, any chance Rushing and Freeland play with the big league club this year? Both are Rule 5 eligible and will need to be added to the 40-man anyway. It's a really good point right there. I think you could potentially see those guys, and it's going to be determined by a couple of different things. We'll start with Dalton Rushing. I think a lot of it is going to be determined by how he's doing and how he's able to play a little bit in the outfield. But even if he does well in the outfield, what role do you see him potentially having on this team if you have Michael Conforto, Teoscar Hernandez playing the corners, and you don't even have a room for an Andy Pages out there? Could be determined like that. If he is killing it at the minor league level, let's say he's putting up a 150 WRC plus for a couple of months and is showing that he has the ability to be a little bit flexible in the outfield, maybe that forces the Dodgers' hand to where they have to bring him up to the big league roster. If that is the case, that could be the Dodgers' time to move on from an Austin Barnes, if that is the case. Now, going forward into the future, I would anticipate, at least after the 2025 season, for the Dodgers catching situation to be Will Smith and Dalton Rushing going forward. I think that's what a lot of Dodgers fans are anticipating. If I had to guess, it would probably be, if you're talking about 6 games a week, maybe Will Smith catching 4, Dalton Rushing catching 2, but Dalton Rushing getting additional opportunities in the outfield, leaving one of those corner outfield spots open to where Dalton Rushing could get an additional 2 games, maybe 3 games a week as well, adding on top of that for playing time. So with Rushing with his debut, it depends on how he's hitting. Really depends on how his outfield defense is, which I think likely is going to take some time to be able to develop that going forward. As was mentioned by some of his actual coaches from AAA, Chris Gutierrez talked about that extensively. It's going to take him some time to be able to get comfortable out in the outfield, and I don't want that to happen at the big league level. But as you mentioned, Rule 5 eligible is going to need to be added to the 40-man anyway. If there's no room for him at the big league roster, whatever doesn't use up a minor league option for him at the end of the season, while also giving him an opportunity, would be a good thing. It will depend on injuries, though. And with Alex Freeland, as was mentioned by Alex Friedman during part of the interview, which again, come back tomorrow and be able to check out more of Alex Friedman in his interview, which he talks a little bit about Alex Freeland. Alex Freeland was really starting to pick it up in Oklahoma City at the end of the season. Last couple of weeks was 160, I believe, WRC plus, with really solid, really good defense at the shortstop position. Another guy, Rule 5 eligible, and what could be determined for him is a couple of different things. First off, primarily how Alex Freeland is doing. Is he similar to that player at Oklahoma City that he was in Tulsa and in Great Lakes and in the last couple of weeks? Or does he start off struggling a little bit? There's going to be likely some struggles for any of these guys throughout the course of the season. Even Dalton Rushing during his time in Great Lakes in 2023 went for basically an entire month stretch where he didn't get a hit. And yet he is still as rock solid as he possibly can be. Part of that had to do with he's dealing with injuries, so it was like an over 30 stretch, not an over 80 stretch or anything ridiculous like that. Alex Freeland, how does he handle some of the ups and downs, and is he able to maintain as much consistency as he showed at the Great Lakes level early in the 2024 season and during a significant amount of his time in Tulsa? And also what happens to Mookie Betts at shortstop. We don't know how Mookie Betts is going to be at the shortstop position in 2025. We assume that it's going to be better because he has the entire offseason to work on it than it was in 2024. But if it's not, and they have to move him to the second base position, then yes, they would get some time to fill in with a Tommy Edman and maybe even with a Miguel Rojas. But if Alex Freeland is hitting really well during the minor leagues, and you need a shortstop, and Mookie Betts is just not handling it at the shortstop position, you might as well see what you have with an Alex Freeland if the opportunity presents itself, and he is the best option going forward. So that's a scenario where I can see Alex Freeland being added to this team. Regardless, assuming that neither of them are traded, which they're making free agent signings to avoid trading these types of players, they likely are going to be added to the 40-man roster anyway in order to avoid it. So that could be a possibility at some point for both of these guys. However, what I don't want to see as an organization them do is call both of them up to the 40-man roster, call them both up to the big league roster, add them to the 40-man roster, let's say sometime in the middle of the season, add them to the major league roster, start them or play them for, let's say, a week or two, and then send them down to the minor league level, and then don't call them up, in which case they use up one of their minor league options, which we talk about with James Ellman and Andy Pages, both very limited. I don't want this season, unless they spend significant time invested into Dalton Rushing and Alex Freeland, them losing one of their minor league options this season. That would be one of my concerns with them. Showtime LA. Also, how much run do you expect DePaula and Hope to get in spring training? They'll certainly get a decent amount of at-bats. I think if you remember back to last year in spring trainings of the past, guys that get invited to spring training typically gets the last couple of innings, and I would anticipate that being quite a bit for DePaula and Hope, or at least for the first week or two of spring training before they start moving guys back to the minor league level. It's not going to be anything crazy. You're certainly going to get some at-bats, but it's not going to be... They're probably going to invest more at-bats in spring training at the big league level to a guy like a Ryan Ward or an Austin Gauthier or some of these guys that are a little bit closer, just because they want to continue to go through instructs with Zaire Hope and Depot, Josue DePaula, and make sure that they get acclimated to some of their teammates as well. You could also see a lot of playing time for Rushing and Alex Freeland during spring training, which I know you're super excited about seeing as well. Tony, let's continue looking at this right here. Is Mookie Betts baseball version of Patrick Mahomes? He has the most rings of any active player, 3. The Dodgers also won. They're basically one win from a dynasty. It's an interesting comparison. I don't think it's exactly perfect, just because we're now seeing Patrick Mahomes potentially win 3 Super Bowls in a row, which is nuts and absolutely crazy. I think there's a lot more comparisons, or at least there could be a lot more comparisons going forward from a lot of different fan bases as far as the Chiefs as an organization to the Dodgers as an organization. But certainly I like the comparison of Mookie Betts, who certainly is getting a reputation as a player who has brought in rings dating back to his time in Boston, and now 2 times with the Dodgers. Jay, thank you very much for joining us. Question: were you surprised the Dodgers spent big on a leverage reliever in Tanner Scott? Absolutely, I was. This is not common for the Dodgers to spend big on relievers. It goes outside of their character of what they typically do for relievers. Relievers are incredibly volatile, and the Dodgers know that, and they typically don't like to sign some of these guys to big free agent deals because of how up and down they are, and because they have a big track record of going and do so. So absolutely, I was surprised that they were doing that. I'm not surprised that the Dodgers, if they were going to spend big on a reliever, wanted somebody as talented as Tanner Scott was, because of reasons that we've talked about on the shows. And also, I think Casey did a really good job over the past couple of shows, which apologize for not being able to be on any of the past couple of shows, of talking about the journey of Tanner Scott, which has not been one of these guys that has called up and immediately been dominant at the big league level. He's had to work through and earn his different spot. He has had to go through the struggles of walking over 6 batters a 9, 6 batters per 9 innings pitched, of having an ERAs in the 4s and the 5s, to becoming this dominant reliever and learning things along the way. Really good thought process to be able to preach that patience for the guys that are coming up who might be struggling a little bit at this point, but have the tools to be able to put it all together. And the Dodgers saw the tools, and I think the tools fit incredibly well with what they're looking for, and they saw an opportunity and they were willing to spend big on that. And one of the things that's another aspect that I think goes understated with this team is an organization, is they are willing to go ahead and spend as much money as they possibly can to win. Far beyond what I think all of us were expecting or anticipating a normal front office to spend. They are going to spend that type of money. See, a couple more comments I got to leave here in just a minute. Got some things to do tonight. Showtime LA. I can't wait for rushing debut. Dude is going to be so good. As much of a sure thing as prospect goes. Don't think it's another Miguel Vargas situation. Yeah, I'm super excited for Rush as well. I think for a Dodgers fan, he's going to be one of those players that you are going to really, really like what he's able to do because of his character. Incredibly hardworking. One of those guys that's an absolute bulldog out there in the batter's box and wants to win every single time, every single pitch, every single second that he's up there. He's doing what he can to win and to help the people around him as well. The standard that he holds for every single player that plays with him is phenomenal, and he plays with a lot of effort. Mr. Classic, how many days do we have left till spring training? I believe it is 24 days away until spring training games start, but it is just 2 weeks away until pitchers and catchers report. Super excited about that. Yeah, Christian Rivera, thank you very much for joining us. I got to start a little bit early Monday nights. It is 2:15 is the start time that I have because I'm squeezing this right after work. I worked up until 2 o'clock, which 5 o'clock here in Eastern time, and then 7 o'clock here Eastern, 4 o'clock. I got to go and travel. I got some stuff that I got to do after that as well. So let's see. I think that's going to do it for the show tonight. It's been a fun show. It's been good to be able to have a little bit of back and forth, be able to discuss all of these different options, these different scenarios that we have. We will continue to do this going forward, Dodgers Daily, even though not a whole lot of news that is breaking right now in the world of Dodgers. That just gives me an opportunity to be able to interact with you guys, and I can't thank you guys enough for what you have done, what you have meant for the show. This offseason, we've gone through quite a journey of evaluating the roster of where it's at, to finding different opportunities for guys, and we've seen where this front office has taken it. They're going for the World Series, and they're doing whatever they can with the opportunity that they have now. You do not get many of these opportunities during your time of baseball, and when you have an opportunity with a roster as stacked as it is at this point, you got to do whatever you can to make it as talented as you possibly can. And the Dodgers have shown a willingness that no other organization has to investing in their team and to investing in the talent of players that they have. It's absolutely amazing to watch, and we're happy to be able to cover it here going forward. So, thank you very much for joining us today. Be sure to tune back to Dodgers Dawgs tomorrow night. Alex Friedman, play-by-play broadcaster for now the Oklahoma City Comets, is going to be joining Casey, and it's going to be a fun show. I believe there will be a live show Wednesday night as well at our normal time. I believe it's 5:30 Pacific is when Casey and I should be going live for that, unless plans change. So thank you very much for joining us. Absolute pleasure. Absolutely blessed to be able to join with you guys. Until next time, go Dodgers.